Hey everybody, Manga here, and I know it's been a little bit since I've made a video. That's because I've been busy. Grad school, in a surprise to no one, keeps you busy. So today is finally, as you can see from the setup, the Vampire Hunter D video day. So this is, I can never remember if it's brief history of or a history of. It's just a history of the Vampire Hunter D franchise. So I've got books, I've got movies, I've got some cool art I'll show you later. But yeah, so today is just the history of the Vampire Hunter D franchise. It's one of my favorites. I very much like Vampire Hunter D. And I'm excited to get a little bit into the history of it for you guys. So I've got my notes here. So if you see me looking down, that's what I'm looking at. I'm looking at my notes. But to start us off with today's video, I'm going to start with the books. So the books are numerous. There are over 20 of them out in syndication right now. What I have here are the omnibuses. These are 3-in-1s, and this is volume 1, and then this is volume 5. This is too thick to read, in my opinion. It's too thick. So is volume 4. Just too thick to read. Getting into the books, the author is Hideyuki Kikuchi, and he was born in 1949. And his other works include Demon City Shinjuku and Wicked City. And growing up in the post-World War II sort of Japan environment, he would have seen firsthand the destruction left after the bombs were dropped, and just the condition of Japan after the war. And this is debated, but it is sort of theorized that this is sort of what inspired the setting for Vampire Hunter D, because Vampire Hunter D is very post-apocalyptic and destitute and sort of in an already blown up state. So that is what most people, and I don't think Kikuchi has just outright said it, but that is what most people think the setting of Vampire Hunter D is inspired by. So some context for the D books. The first novel was released in 1983, and a full 25 years earlier than the sort of Western vampire craze that happened in the early and later 2000s. So this is 25 years before Twilight and all that stuff. Vampire movies. There was Bram Stoker's Dracula, Dracula Dead and Loving It, but other than those two sort of totally different sides of the spectrum vampire movies, there wasn't a lot of vampire stuff, in especially in the West, in sort of the media zeitgeist wasn't really that much of a thing. Since it was the early 80s, Kikuchi did not really have much of a trend to build off of, so he just made up what he wanted to write, and that pretty much explains the Vampire Hunter D setting. D is very, very unique. So some more sort of set dressing. So the world of Vampire Hunter D happens 10,000 years in the future. So basically, so far in the future that anything goes. And the sort of the backbone of the franchise is that over those thousands and thousands of years, there's been a ruling class of vampire nobles that have sort of been in the background, and then sort of closer to where D happens, they were in power and then lost power. So D happens after sort of the high vampire society has fallen down, and that's when D is roaming around doing his thing, and that's when the main story is set. Each story in the D universe is like a snapshot. Not many of them are direct sequels. They're very loosely connected, so each book is like its own thing. The series itself is episodic, so each book is essentially a long episode. And there's not many characters that make reappearances, but I think in some of the later books there are a couple that do show up. I haven't gotten that far in the books, but I do know that there are a couple instances of characters coming back. The first D novel, so the first book in this omnibus, doesn't so much explain a whole lot of the world. It just kind of gives you the feeling of the setting. So there's not going to be a lot of in the year 9432 this vampire specifically did this one thing, and that's why this is like this. No, there's not a lot of that. It's like D is walking down a dusty track because the track is dusty, kind of stuff. Doesn't do a whole lot in setting up the in explaining the world. It just does it mostly. Most of the legwork is sort of setting up the feel of the world, which is very bleak to say the least. The world of Vampire Hunter D, and these are my own words. I found these and I thought it was very interesting, so I wrote it down, and I'm gonna have to look at it. So the world of Vampire Hunter D has been described as post-apocalyptic science fiction, Lovecraftian horror, dark fantasy, occult folktale romance. That's a lot. That's a lot in one sentence. And that really makes a lot of sense for the kind of setting D is. It's wholly unique to a lot of stuff I've read before. And I think that's part of why I like it. It's just really, really, really unique in its sort of setup, and you're reading it, it's like, man, I've seen nothing like this before. That's what really drew me into it and made me want to talk about it some more. And if the cover art looks familiar at all, that's because it's done by Yoshinaka Amano, same creator, artist who does the Final Fantasy covers. Every new Final Fantasy game, that same artwork, same art style. Same guy does the covers for these. So like this is the cover for volume 5 of the books. And after I knew that, I was like, damn, it looks like Final Fantasy. Looks like Final Fantasy characters. But he was doing this before Final Fantasy was even a thing. So he was started on D before the first Final Fantasy game came out. So that's a little bit on the books and the setting of D. This is a pretty light video, just because the D franchise isn't as sort of big as the Ghost in the Shell franchise was. So there's not a whole lot to discuss, but there's enough that interests me to make a video on it. So moving on from the books, we've got the movies. And before we get into it, there's 2 movies here. One just kept falling over and was annoying me. So there is the 1985? Yes, 1985. I could never remember here. I thought it was like, couldn't remember if it was 85 or 86. We have the 1985, just Vampire Hunter D, and then we have the 2000 Vampire Hunter D, Bloodlust. 2 movies, very different movies, but both very good. We'll talk about those in a sec. I want to show off this thing. This I got on eBay. This is a promotional sell. So this isn't a sell from the movie itself, but this is a promotional sell that they put out when the movie was in theaters, and this is a scene from the movie in the cell. And I framed it because it has its own little frame, as you can see, but it's just paper and it's old. It's 20 plus years old. So I've framed it up. But this is very, very cool. I have this hanging in my room. But that is a promotional sell for Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust. Going back to the movies, like I said, we have the 1985 and the 2000s. Going back to the 1985 movie, this is produced by Ashi Productions, who has a pretty strange animation track record. If you go back and look at some of their stuff, they've been animating some interesting things. There's no like pattern at all. It's like random, this, random. The movie was made specifically for an older audience, not more of a general one. And you can tell when you watch it, it's very for 1985. There's a lot of gore and sort of gross body horror elements in this. And this is one of the earliest anime movies to be brought over to the West after Akira's sort of cult success in that same time. It didn't come over, when it released. It came over in the early 90s, but this is one of the first that came over. So this was on, for a lot of people, like on the Sci-Fi Channel, just on TV in the 90s. It did have a theatrical release, however. It released in 6 theaters, if you can count that as a theatrical release. Released in 6 theaters and made over $151,000, and adjusted for inflation, that's about $340,000 today. So not a big success, but enough to get a little bit of a cult following. The dub for this movie originally wasn't great. I watched the original. It's not great, but Sentai Filmworks did redo the dub and reformat it on Blu-ray. So this is the Sentai version, and it is much better. They re-recorded all the lines, all that stuff. Managed to keep, surprisingly, some of the original voice actors came back, but much better dub in this. And yeah, so I got this on Amazon for I think like $15. So this is pretty easy to get your hands on. It's not like a collector thing. It's pretty easy to get your hands on. You can stream it in a couple places. I'm pretty sure it's on Amazon, even YouTube as well. And however, the one gripe I do have is the budget on this movie was not a lot at all, and you can really tell. it's sort of a little bit more than an animated, special for that time period. So the main complaint a lot of people have this is just it doesn't look great, which is kind of important if it's an animated movie. It kind of needs to look pretty good, but it doesn't look great, and but it gets the story across from the first novel, and it's a pretty faithful recreation of the first novel. So, but yeah, the animation quality in this isn't the best, but I still recommend watching it if you're interested. And another thing with the movie is that the art direction, despite the small budget, is really good. So if you're a fan of Bloodborne, you'll pick up Bloodborne sort of feelings from really any of Vampire Hunter D. You'll be like, okay, this is a lot like Bloodborne. I like Bloodborne, so I was like, ooh, yes, spooky castles and demons, yes, I need it. But yeah, so very, very much similar to Bloodborne, so if that's all you need for a recommendation to watch it, you should. And moving on to Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust, this movie blows pardon my French, out of the fucking water. This is an insane jump in quality. Absolutely insane. This is Studio Bones, same studio as One Punch Man, Black Lagoon, all of those. There's a whole bunch. I can't remember all of them, but they're all really good. So the studio made this. Great track record. If that's all you need to watch it, you should just watch it. But getting into the actual sort of history of the movie, so it is directed by Yoshiaki Kawajiri. Also directed a lot of other stuff. Also worked on Ninja Scroll, Demon City Shinjuku, One Punch Man, as I've already said, and Jujutsu Kaisen. So he's still working. The movie was announced in 1997 and released in 2001, and at that time there were 19 Vampire Hunter D novels out. This one is based, however, on the third novel, and the reason they picked the third novel is I think it's one of the more unique ones. It's got a different feel than a lot of the D novels. It's got some more humanized characters and stuff like that. I'm not going to spoil anything, so it's just really good. You should read the book. But this is actually, it's based on the book. It does not follow the book exactly. And in my opinion, I think this is a better version of the third book. So if you don't really want to read the third book, watch the movie. It's great. It's a better version. Anyways, the movie was released with a North American theatrical release in mind. So even when it was released, it was in English with Japanese subtitles when it was in Japan. But there's two gripes I do have with this movie. The mixing is a little funky, and there's a lot of other videos that talk about Vampire Hunter D will say the same thing. The mixing's a little funky, so if you're watching it on at home, there's some parts that are like really, really quiet. You got to turn the volume way up to hear it, and then there's other parts that'll blow your eardrums out if you don't turn the volume down. That, and instead of calling D a Dampier, which he is, in this they call him a Dunpeel, which is just a translation error they didn't bother to fix. It's even in like the text at the rolling text at the beginning of the movie. It's Dunpeel. He's not a Dunpeel. He's a Dampier. But that's nitpicking at this point. This movie is great. You should watch the movie. It's absolutely fantastic. And one of my favorite things in this movie is the voice acting. The voice acting is great. It is fantastic. It is great voice acting. All the actors did a phenomenal job. So yeah, this movie is. It's not quite my favorite, but it's getting up there with my favorite anime/anime movie. It's up there. It's probably number 2. And now there is one more thing that I do not have here that is still part of the Vampire Hunter D franchise, and that is the manga. Manga is released by Dark Horse, and it is hella expensive to collect. From what I've seen, there's only 8 volumes right now. I'm not sure if they only made 8 and then just stopped making it, but for a set of all 8, it not only is it hard to find a full set, it's expensive. It's like $350 for a set of all 8. And I've looked, I've contemplated buying it, but it's just too much. It's just too much. So I that's the one thing I don't have from the D franchise. But the manga does look very, very good, and it is sort of based on. The art style is very similar to kind of like the character design sketches that were being made in the process of Bloodlust development. So that is pretty cool. But that is one aspect of the D franchise that I do not have with me here today. And that really is all I have for you guys today. I know it's not as flashy or as long as the first history of video, but that's mainly just that Vampire Hunter D is a bit of a smaller franchise, and that's really all there is to that. But still is one of my favorites. I always recommend people check it out when they haven't read it, haven't watched it. I always recommend people check it out. So yeah, that is everything for today's video, guys. So don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, share. I will be experimenting with some recording stuff over this winter break, because guess what? It's Christmas in like a week and a half. This video was supposed to come out on Halloween. That's how backed up I was. So yeah, I'm going to be experimenting with some recording, so you might see some more stuff coming somewhat soon. I won't make any promises though, just because I'm busy. But that is everything for today. Don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, share, all that fun stuff. And don't forget to follow my Instagram. I'm getting back to posting on there again. I was very busy. But yeah, I will see you guys in the next video. See ya. Bye-bye.